In Middletown, Ohio, the Morrison family's white two-story house stood in a quiet neighborhood with lush green lawns. Seasonal flowers adorned the entrance, and on weekends, the sound of Robert Morrison's meticulously operated lawn mower would echo through the neighborhood. They were the embodiment of what many people aspire to as the American dream. Caroline had worked as a nurse at the local general hospital for over 10 years. Her kindness and reliable skills earned her the trust of her colleagues, and patients sometimes called her the angel nurse. With her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, she always maintained a warm smile despite her tired expression. Her husband Robert had 15 years of experience as a construction site supervisor at Middletown Construction, and his work was respected by both his superiors and subordinates. His sturdy build and suntanned skin told the story of a man who worked hard in the field. On weekends, he coached the local Little League, enthusiastically contributing to youth development. "Mom, I finished my homework. Is Dad going to be late again today?" From behind Caroline, who was preparing dinner in the kitchen, came the voice of her 9-year-old son Michael. He had brown eyes like his father and a round face, and was a curious child who excelled at math in school. "Yes, he mentioned this morning that he had a site meeting. He should be home around 7, Caroline answered while cutting vegetables. She was planning to make nikujaga meat and potato stew. It was Robert's favorite. "Is Emma still in her room?" "Yes, she's been there since she got home. Her door is completely shut."
Do you know some people earn over $10,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I do it too. Link below if you're curious.
At Michael's words, Caroline put down her knife and wiped her hands. Recently, she had noticed changes in her 14-year-old daughter Emma. She had always been a serious and responsible child, but over the past month, she had suddenly lost her energy and seemed to have a decreased appetite. Was it typical teenage troubles? Caroline was concerned but tried not to intrude too much, respecting her daughter's privacy. "Emma, dinner's almost ready. Come down," she knocked on the door of her room upstairs. A faint "yes" came in response. When Emma appeared through the door that opened shortly after, she looked thinner. Her once plump, healthy cheeks were beginning to show her cheekbones. "Did you finish your homework?" "Most of it. I'll finish it later, don't worry." Emma's voice was small, and she wouldn't make eye contact. Once the ace of the basketball team, she had recently been missing practices, saying she was tired. Caroline placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder, but Emma flinched slightly. "If there's anything bothering you, you can always talk to me. I'm always ready to listen." "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired." Emma smiled faintly, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Around 6:30, the front door opened and Robert came home. His strong voice saying, "I'm home," echoed throughout the house, and Michael rushed out to his father. "Dad. I got 100 on my math test today. That's my boy." Robert lifted his son high in the air, laughing. Then he approached Caroline in the kitchen and kissed her on the cheek. "Good job today. Ah, nikujaga. Smells great. It's your favorite. Go wash your hands. It's ready." The 4 family members gathered around the dining table, sharing stories of their day. This was their daily scene. Robert humorously narrated events from the construction site, while Michael excitedly reported his discoveries at school. However, Emma barely touched her food and only gave brief answers when asked questions. "Emma, eat more. It's not good for your health if you don't eat enough," Robert said. Emma nodded slightly and forced herself to take a few more bites, but soon said, "Thank you for the meal," and tried to leave the table. "But we still have dessert," Caroline said worriedly. "I have homework to do. I'll eat it later." As they heard Emma going up the stairs, Caroline exchanged glances with her husband. Robert frowned but didn't say anything. That night, after the children had gone to bed, Caroline passed by Emma's room. She heard soft sobbing. She hesitated, wanting to knock, but decided to have a thorough talk with her after school tomorrow and headed to her own bedroom. Caroline was walking briskly down the busy hospital corridor, checking patient charts as she weaved between doctors and nurses. 3 post-operation patients had been admitted to the surgical ward, and she had been busy all morning. "Caroline, the patient in room 303 is calling for you," her colleague Jennifer called out. Caroline nodded and changed direction. Looking at her watch, she saw it was almost her lunch break. Today she had planned to have lunch with her colleagues in the cafeteria for the first time in a while. On this ordinary Tuesday at 2:15 p.m., Caroline's life suddenly changed. "Morrison, there's a phone call for you." "It's from the school," said Susan from reception, approaching with urgency. Seeing the tension in her expression, Caroline felt a tightening in her chest. When she picked up the receiver, a breathless female voice came through. "Mrs. Morrison. This is the school nurse from Middletown High. Your daughter Emma collapsed during physical education class. She's conscious, but her color is very poor, and we've called an ambulance. They're heading to Westside General Hospital." The blood drained from Caroline's face. "What? Emma?" "Yes, it seems like anemia. She said she was feeling unwell since this morning, but she participated in class. She suddenly collapsed after running for a few minutes." Caroline tried to regain her composure as a nurse despite her agitation. "I understand. I'll head there right away." After hanging up, she quickly explained the situation to her supervisor Martha. Martha was an understanding boss and immediately said, "Go ahead, family comes first." Caroline hastily grabbed her bag, still in her uniform, and ran toward the parking lot. "Robert." While starting the car's engine, she called her husband. Robert was supervising a large construction site and couldn't always answer immediately, but fortunately today he picked up on the 3rd ring. "Caroline? What's wrong, calling at this hour?" "Emma collapsed at school. She's being taken to Westside Hospital by ambulance." There was a moment of silence on the phone, followed by Robert's low, tense voice. "What? Why? I don't know the details yet. It seems like she fainted from anemia during PE class. I'll leave the site right away. I'll be at the hospital within an hour." "All right. I'm on my way there now. I'll call you as soon as I know anything." Upon arriving at the hospital's emergency room, Caroline rushed to the counter. "I'm Emma Morrison's mother. I was told my daughter was brought here by ambulance." The receptionist quickly checked her computer and replied, "Your daughter is currently undergoing tests. Please wait in the waiting area. The doctor will speak with you shortly." Caroline sat in the waiting room, holding her breath. As a nurse, she had seen countless families of emergency patients, but being in their position herself, the anxiety and fear were beyond what she had imagined. After a while, a middle-aged doctor in a white coat called her name. "Mrs. Morrison. Emma's mother. I'm Dr. Martin." They entered an examination room, and the doctor motioned for Caroline to sit. "Emma is currently conscious and stable. However, she's in a state of severe anemia and malnutrition. Her hemoglobin level has dropped to 8.2 g/dl. As a healthcare professional, Caroline understood that this was a dangerous level. "How?" she faltered. "Has your daughter been eating properly recently? Has there been any sudden weight loss?" Caroline caught her breath. Indeed, Emma had seemed to lack appetite recently. She had been leaving more food on her plate, but Caroline hadn't thought it was this serious. "She hasn't had much appetite lately. But I thought it was just a temporary phase of adolescence." Dr. Martin nodded gently. Changes in eating behavior during adolescence are common. However, in Emma's case, it might not be just a loss of appetite, but a more complex issue. Psychological stress or anxiety could be involved. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and Miss Jones, Emma's homeroom teacher, entered. She was a tall woman with an intellectual air who taught English in Emma's class. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm sorry about what happened. I came directly from the school." Caroline stood up and shook hands with the teacher. "Thank you. How has Emma been at school?" Miss Jones hesitated slightly before answering. "Actually, I've noticed concerning changes in Emma recently. She's been less energetic during class, interacting less with friends, and spending more time alone. Her grades have also started to decline." Caroline felt uneasy seeing the glances exchanged between Dr. Martin and the teacher. "Are there any issues at home?" Miss Jones quietly asked. Caroline was at a loss for words. As far as she knew, their home was peaceful with no particular problems. Robert could be strict at times, but there was no doubt he loved the children. "Nothing, that I can think of." "Let's wait for the test results," Dr. Martin intervened. "For now, nutrition and rest are the priorities. She'll need to be hospitalized for a few days." Caroline asked to see her daughter. Emma was lying in bed, wearing a hospital gown, pale-faced, and looking smaller than usual. And 4 was connected to her arm. "Mom." Emma began to cry when she saw Caroline. "I'm sorry for worrying you." Caroline sat by her daughter's side and took her cold hand. "It's okay, Emma. I'm just glad you're safe. Why did this happen? Is there anything you want to talk about?" Emma averted her eyes slightly and weakly replied, "I was just tired." "I'm fine, don't worry." At that moment, the door to the hospital room opened, and Robert rushed in, out of breath. "Emma. Are you okay?" Caroline didn't miss Emma's momentary expression of tension. Was it fear? Or just surprise? "Dad. I'm fine, it's just anemia." Robert placed his hand on his daughter's forehead and said, "I was worried. You need to eat properly." His voice was filled with concern, but there was also a slightly accusatory tone mixed in. Caroline exchanged glances with her husband and relayed the doctor's information in the hallway. Robert frowned and said, "We have proper meals at home, and there shouldn't be any problems. It's probably just teenage whims." But in Caroline's heart, anxiety began to grow that they might be missing something. Late in the afternoon, the light streaming through the hospital room window was gradually turning orange. Caroline sat in a chair at Emma's bedside, watching her sleeping face. After tests and nutritional 4 drips, Emma had finally fallen into a peaceful sleep. Though her face was still pale, her color seemed to have improved slightly. Robert had left the hospital in the late afternoon, saying he had an important meeting to return to at the site. Caroline had asked him to pick up Michael and handle dinner, deciding to stay at the hospital herself. In the quiet hospital room, questions swirled in Caroline's mind. Emma's rapid weight loss, declining grades, reduced interaction with friends. And above all, that anxious expression occasionally visible in her eyes. Caroline couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something. Had she overlooked important signs in her busy days? "Am I failing as a mother?" she whispered softly. At that moment, the hospital room door quietly opened. Caroline turned around and was a bit surprised to see the person standing at the door. It was a middle-aged man wearing a navy blazer and khaki pants. He had a quiet demeanor and a calm expression, but his gaze held a sharp observational power. "Mrs. Morrison. May I speak with you for a moment?" The man spoke in a quiet voice. Caroline glanced at Emma's sleeping face before standing up and answering, "Yes, of course." The man motioned her into the hallway, and as Caroline left the room, the door closed quietly. "Detective Jim Collins." The man introduced himself, showing his identification. Caroline was confused. "Police? Has something happened?" Detective Collins looked around and led her to a secluded corner of the hallway. His expression remained gentle, but there was a certain gravity to his demeanor. "Ma'am, This was found in your daughter's uniform pocket. Saying this, he handed her a small, folded note paper. The paper had been folded multiple times, and the edges were slightly frayed. Caroline took it with trembling hands and unfolded it. There, in Emma's distinctive round handwriting, was what appeared to be a diary entry. October 15th. Dad yelled again today. Another hole in the living room wall. It's my fault. I can't take it anymore. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to eat. I want to disappear. Caroline caught her breath and turned the page. There were detailed records of home events, dated October 18th. Mom was on night shift, and after Michael went to sleep, Dad was drinking again. When I said the TV was too loud, he grabbed my hair. It hurt. But I couldn't make a sound. I didn't want to wake Michael. October 21st. Dad was in a good mood today. He was kind. I wish days like this would continue. But I'm afraid of when he'll get angry again. I'm always tense. When I eat, I feel sick. Caroline's hands trembled, and her vision blurred. Was this true? Robert, to Emma. In her mind, fragmented memories began to connect. Emma's sudden flinching. The tension that ran through the atmosphere when Robert came home. Unexplained holes in the walls or damaged furniture. Detective Collins quietly continued, the school teachers have also reported concerning points. Your daughter's physical injuries, rapid weight loss, declining grades. He paused, observing Caroline's reaction, then continued in a lower voice, eating disorder symptoms often arise from family issues, particularly abuse. Caroline shook her head. No, that's not right. Robert is a loving, family-oriented father. He even volunteers in the community. He loves Emma. There must be some mistake. Her voice was trembling. She herself realized that her words were trying to convince herself. Detective Collins looked straight into her eyes and said with a serious expression, "Do not tell your husband under any circumstances. This is part of an investigation. Your child's safety comes first." Caroline was shaken and leaned against the hallway wall. If this is true. I didn't notice. Tears fell from her eyes. Why didn't I notice? Mrs. Morrison, please don't blame yourself, Detective Collins said gently. Domestic abusers often show a completely different face to people outside the home. And victims, especially children, often remain silent out of shame or fear. He continued his explanation, the mental stress your child is experiencing has caused an eating disorder, which is the cause of this anemia. The doctor's diagnosis also aligns with this. Caroline slid down the wall to the floor, hugging her knees and staring blankly down the hallway. Something inside her was crumbling away, and at the same time, something was beginning to awaken. How can I protect her? Detective Collins knelt beside Caroline. First, stay calm and think clearly. And please cooperate with us. A Child Protective Services representative will be here soon. We'll respond in coordination with a team of specialists. Caroline reflected on her husband's daily behavior. He was indeed strict at home, especially with Emma. But violence toward Emma. Fragments of Robert's short temper and his increasing aggression when drinking floated in and out of her memory. What had been happening at home when she was on night shifts? Mrs. Morrison, Detective Collins' voice interrupted her thoughts. Right now, your child's safety and physical and mental recovery are the top priorities. We will work with you to find the best approach. Caroline slowly stood up and looked at the door to Emma's hospital room. What should I say to Emma? For now, it's important that you stay by her side and reassure her. A specialized counselor will meet with her soon. Let's create an environment where she can talk about her experiences in her own words. Detective Collins lowered his voice further and added, and to repeat, please do not discuss this matter with your husband. It's important to behave as usual until evidence can be collected. Caroline took a deep breath and wiped away her tears. Her mind was in turmoil, but one thing was clear: she had to protect her children, no matter what. I understand. I'll cooperate. Detective Collins nodded with relief and said, please return to the hospital room now. The Child Protective Services representative will arrive soon. We're here for you. Caroline folded Emma's note with trembling hands and put it in her pocket. As she placed her hand on the door to the hospital room, she hesitated for a moment. Her life would change dramatically from now on. But for her daughter's safety, she had to overcome any difficulties. Taking a deep breath, she quietly opened the door. Emma was still asleep. Caroline sat in the chair by the bedside and took her daughter's small hand. A week had passed since Emma's discharge from the hospital. Caroline had temporarily reduced her hospital shifts and was trying to spend as much time at home as possible. Following her doctor's instructions, Emma was eating balanced meals and getting plenty of rest, gradually regaining her strength. She had also begun meeting with a specialized counselor twice a week. On the surface, the Morrison family seemed to be returning to normal. However, a storm was raging in Caroline's heart. One night, after the children had gone to bed, Caroline stood by the living room window, staring at the dark garden. Normally, this would be the time when she and Robert watched TV together or discussed weekend plans. But now, she felt a mixture of distrust and fear toward her husband. Caroline? Turning at Robert's voice, she saw him sitting on the sofa, looking at her with a beer in his hand. What are you thinking about? You've been acting strange lately. Caroline forced a smile. It's nothing. I'm just worried about Emma. Emma is recovering well, isn't she? You're worrying too much, Robert said, changing the TV channel. By the way, I have a drinking party tomorrow night, so I'll be late. Please check Michael's homework. Yes, I understand. Caroline looked at Robert's profile. In her eyes, she saw the familiar figure of her husband, but now she saw him in a different light. This man had grabbed Emma's hair, punched holes in the wall, and terrified her daughter. It was still difficult to accept this fact. The next morning, Caroline had a secret meeting arranged with Detective Collins and Louisa Sanders from Child Protective Services at a cafe. After sending the children to school and after Robert had left for work, she headed to the meeting place. Mrs. Morrison, over here. Detective Collins and Louisa were waiting for her at a quiet corner table. After exchanging greetings, Louisa began in a gentle voice. Caroline, how was this past week? Any new developments? Caroline took a deep breath. Emma is gradually getting better. However, she's still tense when Robert is home. She faltered for a moment. Last night, I installed a lock on the inside of Emma's door. I explained to Robert that it was to respect her privacy. Detective Collins nodded. Good judgment. The safety of your children is the top priority. Let's talk about the next steps. Louisa opened a file and explained, we need to gather evidence of domestic violence and proceed with legal procedures. This is a difficult process without your cooperation. What should I do? Caroline asked, seeming determined. First, I'd like you to install these in your home. Detective Collins handed her a small box. Inside were several small cameras and recording devices. Hide these in common spaces like the living room and hallway. Never place them in bedrooms or bathrooms. Louisa continued, also, create opportunities to talk one-on-one with Emma and encourage her to talk about past events. Don't force her, but respect her pace. In the 2-hour conversation, Caroline learned about specific methods of evidence collection, legal options, and most importantly, the psychological care of her children. Her heart was a mixture of fear and determination, but her goal of protecting her children was clear. From the next day, she began taking action. While Robert was away, she installed small cameras behind the TV in the living room, in the shadow of the bookshelf, and on top of the kitchen cabinet. She created time to talk quietly with Emma alone in the garden. "Emma, you can tell me anything. Mom is on your side." At first, Emma was cautious, but she gradually began to open up. "I thought Dad got angry because I was bad. But Lisa, my counselor, says that's not true." "That's right, Emma. You did nothing wrong." Caroline hugged her daughter, hiding her tears. For the next 3 weeks, Caroline carefully continued to gather evidence. The recorded footage showed Robert behaving intimidatingly toward Emma, raising his voice, and most shockingly, punching the wall when Michael made a mistake on his homework. Louisa and Detective Collins reviewed these pieces of evidence and determined that there were sufficient legal grounds. Together with them, Caroline began planning to move the children to a safe place and started considering divorce proceedings. The day before executing the plan, Caroline confided the truth to her old friend Sarah and secured a place of refuge in case of emergency. "If anything happens, come to our house anytime," Sarah said, making Caroline feel a slight weight lifted from her shoulders for the first time. That night, after the children had gone to bed, she was packing a small bag with essentials in her room. According to the plan, tomorrow afternoon, while Robert was at work, she would pick up the children and take refuge at Sarah's house. However, fate did not give her that chance. She heard the front door open and looked at the clock. 9 p.m. Too early for Robert to be coming home. "Caroline!" A shout echoed from downstairs. Quickly hiding the bag in the closet, she descended the stairs. Robert was standing in the living room. His face was red with anger, and his eyes were bloodshot from alcohol. "What is this?" He threw his mobile phone at her. The screen displayed a message from Louisa about changing the time for tomorrow's meeting. Caroline felt the blood drain from her face. "What are you doing behind my back?" Robert approached her. The strong smell of alcohol was pungent. "Nothing, really." Caroline stepped back. "Don't lie." Robert punched the wall, and a photo frame fell and shattered. "You're trying to take Emma and Michael away from me, aren't you?" Caroline said in a trembling voice. "Robert, calm down." "The children." At that moment, a voice came from the top of the stairs. "That's enough." Turning around, she saw Emma standing at the top of the stairs. "Enough, Dad. Stop hurting Mom and us anymore." The soft spring sunlight streamed through the living room window. Caroline stood by the window of her new home, watching Michael playing in the front yard. A year had passed since that night. A different town in Ohio, a smaller but warmer house. It was a place of new beginnings for the Morrison family. "Mom, look. I finished the costume." Emma came running down the stairs. In her hands was a costume she had made for the school drama club's presentation. A healthy glow had returned to Emma's face, and her eyes were lively again. "It's beautiful, Emma. Perfect for you." Caroline hugged her daughter. That night, Emma's courage to stand up to her father changed everything. Detective Collins and his team rushed in, and Robert was arrested. In the subsequent trial, he was found guilty and ordered to serve time in prison as well as participate in a domestic violence rehabilitation program. The divorce proceedings were already complete, and Caroline continued her work as a nurse while building a new life with her children. Weekly counseling sessions helped heal their wounds, and they were moving forward, slowly but surely. "There was mail today," Emma pointed to an envelope on the kitchen table. Caroline picked it up and took a deep breath, seeing the sender's name. It was from Robert Morrison. Having completed the program, Robert had started sending letters 3 months ago. The first letter contained his deep apology and acknowledgement of responsibility for his actions. He mentioned the abuse he had received from his own father and expressed shame for not breaking that cycle. Caroline initially thought about ignoring the letters. However, she felt the need to confront the past for the sake of the children's future. Especially Michael, who occasionally asked about his father. "You don't have to open it, Mom," Emma said quietly. "It's okay. We're moving forward." Caroline smiled and opened the envelope. The letter detailed Robert's progress in rehabilitation and his wish to gradually repair his relationship with the children. Caroline finished reading it and quietly folded it up. "What will you do?" Emma asked. "I don't know yet. But I want to decide while consulting with you all." Caroline looked outside the window. There, Michael was playing energetically with the neighborhood children. She smiled. What she had learned in this past year was that family is not just about blood ties, but about protecting and respecting each other, and having the courage to change when necessary. Time would prove whether Robert had truly changed. But she and her children would no longer live in fear. "It's going to be okay," Caroline placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "We've overcome together, and we'll continue together." Outside, the spring breeze announced the arrival of a new season.